Ignore the thunder outside your window and focus, if you will, on the one triggered on the Quirinale, one of the 7 hills of Rome, home of the President's Palace, now lording it over unruly politicians. The President's job is to ensure that power passes smoothly from one government to the next, just like the honor guard outside his front door. But what does a president do when the 2 parties with enough votes to form a government are anti-establishment populists? Answer: he appoints someone else to run the country. But who? Enter the latest candidate. Yesterday, President Sergio Mattarella, the one with the platinum mane, appointed a prime minister who most Italians had never heard of, let alone voted for. Carlo Cottarelli, known as Signor Scissors, rose up the ranks of the IMF as a cost-cutting crusader, the chiseled face of austerity. He represents the exact opposite of what voters of both the Five-Star Movement and the League had been yearning for. Signor Scissors was in charge of forming a government, the 5th unelected prime minister to do so in Italy in 7 years. Until, that is, he apparently cut himself out of the picture this afternoon. No wonder the elected party leaders who thought they were going to run the country have been furious. First, the 31-year-old leader of the Five-Star Movement, who must be feeling old before his time.
We have a big problem. It's called democracy. But this is not a free democracy.
Then next in the lineup of selfie broadcasts was Matteo Salvini, the firebrand leader of the League.
The president said no to us because we are not reassuring enough for Europe and the markets. And like a rabbit out of the hat, they produces Mr. Cottarelli as our new prime minister.
Their crucial mistake? To try and appoint a finance minister who once described the euro as a German cage and was accused of plotting to break Italy out of the currency. So this today from one of the keepers of that cage.
Meine Sorge ist und meine Erwartung ist, dass die nächsten Wochen zeigen, dass die Märkte, dass die Staatsanleihen.
My fear, nay, my expectation in the coming weeks is that the institutions, the stock markets and the bond markets will send a sufficiently trenchant signal to Italian voters that electing populists from left or right is a bad idea.
Cue another outburst in German, this time fake German, from Beppe Grillo, the comedian who founded the Five-Star Movement. Translation not possible, except to say that Italians are beginning to view Germans like the Greeks once did, and it's not very flattering. Back to that storm. I know you laugh at Italian politics and think of opera, but Italy is Europe's 4th largest economy. Too big to fail, too big to save, too complex to solve.
Well, Italy's political turmoil has sent a wave of concern throughout financial markets and the Eurozone. Our economics correspondent, Helia Ebrahimi, is with me. Helia, put us in the picture.
Well, you know, the market reaction today shows how precarious Italy's position is, because the investors are taking a bet on whether there might be fresh elections and what that means. Could you get a government that's even more Eurosceptic, that's quite willing to walk away from the Eurozone entirely? And of course, any talk of a Eurozone crisis leads to market chaos. You saw a wall of red in Italy across every Italian board. Started in Italy, went on to Germany and the UK, and banks were particularly hard hit. That's because the Italian banking sector is very fragile, and any risk of default is important because it's still so interwoven with the whole system.
But a lot of these events might not happen for months, so why the turmoil now?
Well, you know, Italy is hanging on by a thread politically, as Matt was describing, but also economically. This is a country that has underperformed when it comes to growth. In fact, if you take a look at the average growth rate, it's been minus 0.5% for the last 10 years. That's recessionary territory. It's a country where there's more than 2 trillion euros worth of debt. That's 87,000 euros per household. And remember, unemployment is incredibly high, 11% across the country, but if you go to the poorer areas, it's as much as 23%. So the stakes are very high. Now, if you took all of those numbers to someone in Brussels or Berlin, they would say this is the very justification for Italian austerity. But if you look at the other side of the argument, people will say those dire figures perfectly exemplify the German cage that the Italian economy has found itself in, because the promises to pay down the deficit every year has meant that the Italian government hasn't been able to spend and invest on jobs and growth, something the populists say is much more important than fiscal discipline. Now, I have to tell you, all of this is happening against a backdrop where the European Central Bank is pumping in 340 billion euros into the Italian system. So if the populists do get in, Kathy, they may find that the German cage is a lot more forgiving than the outside world.
Indeed. Helia, thanks very much. John.
Well, now, in a moment, I will be talking to Five-Star Movement MEP Tiziana Beghin in Strasbourg. They're the populist party that topped the polls in the recent Italian elections. But first, I'm joined from Rome by Senator Lucio Milan of Forza Italia, former Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi's party. Senator Milan, in a nutshell, what is going on in Italy tonight?
Well, there was not a majority after the last elections of the 4th day of March. And so after many weeks of consultations and trials, they were about to make a government with the two most important parties, the Five-Star Movement and the League. But then everything fell because of the name of one minister. On one hand, the President of the Republic did what many of his predecessors did, that is to veto or say to give the advice to take away one of the names of the ministers. And they did it many times, but the choice of the leaders of the two parties, especially Matteo Salvini, the leader of the League, was that without that name they weren't willing to form a government. So it was a completely new situation. The President of the Republic acted within its powers, this is my opinion, but he did it in a way that never had such big consequences. And so I think that at the end of the day, it was partially a mistake, at least on the point of view of the public opinion. On the other hand, there is a very hard line among the two parties that wanted to form the government. And after all, I think that they are getting what they wanted, that is new elections that so far see these same parties in the lead.
But let me just interrupt you there, Senator. I mean, can we tonight still describe Italy as a democracy? After all, this attempt to make an unelected prime minister is the 5th time in 7 years.
Well, of course, we are a democracy. We are a democracy that for a number of reasons has not been able to express a majority in the elections. This is because we are not only split in two parts, in two coalitions, as it was for 20 years between 1994 and 2008, but we are split in at least three major political subjects, and therefore it is very hard to have a majority. Actually, we didn't have it. Then our mechanisms are a little, well, are very peculiar. The President of the Republic has been elected by another majority, but still retains relevant power in the appointment of the new government. So I think that there should have been more interaction, more cooperation between the current majority and the President of the Republic. I was not there.
Can I ask you, is the euro a German cage?
Many Italians feel it this way. I don't think that's the way. I think that now and then we have been treated unfairly. And also today, the declaration of the EU Commissioner that you aired a little while ago was very offensive, was felt offensive by all Italians, even those who are absolutely in favor of European Union and Euro. To say that they will teach us how to vote is not something that is taken in the right way. So this Oettinger, may be right on his point of view or even on the point of view of the markets. In fact, we have to keep to have be very careful with our deficit, with our public debt, but this is not an authority. A European authority should not speak that way.
Right.
And this was the best propaganda in favor of the anti-Euro parties.
Senator Lucia Milan, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Let's turn then to Tiziana Beghin. Ms. Beghin, do you want to leave the euro for sure?
No, we do not want, and we never say that we want to do it. This is the big fake news that the other parties are continuously repeating in order to make it true. But we do not want to do it. We do not tell about leaving Europe.
But let me interrupt you for a moment.
By speaking, nor in the contract.
Forgive me, but I mean, the very person that you appointed as the finance minister has openly said he wanted to leave the euro.
No. Actually, the minister that has been indicated by the League has an opinion and is very critical about the Eurozone, but this is definitely something that is evident and clear, that Eurozone has to be reformed and restructured. And we are not also, not even anti-Euro, we are Euro critics. That is something completely different. What we have written in our proposal, in our contract that we signed together with the League, before having the possibility to go to our President Mattarella and create a government, is that we want to be more stable as country. We want to be more strong in order to come in Europe and to negotiate, in order to have more possibility to reinvest.
Well, can I ask you? I mean,
yes, please.
In the south, there is terrible poverty. I mean, if you go to a restaurant in this country, there are many, many Italians from the south with very good educational degrees and the rest of it, but who cannot get jobs in Italy.
Yes, for sure.
If you go to the north of Italy, of course, there is a lot of wealth and a lot of very good production and the rest of it. Is Italy ungovernable?
No, this is not completely true, actually. You may find also in north of Italy many areas where the unemployment rate is very high. For example, I live in Piedmont, in a province where the unemployment rate is particularly high. So we have this problem in all Italy. We have nearly 10 million people now that are very near the poverty area. We have people that are not able to have a sanitary assistance. And this is not in the south of Italy only, but in all Italy. So for sure, we have many difficulties. We know, we are completely, totally aware of it, but we do not think that the solution is to only to cut, to have a spending review that is absolutely important, and we need it. We know and we are sure that we need to make investment. This is what is very important.
Right.
We have such problem in Italy, like corruption, like mafia, and so on, that we need to solve once for all.
Right.
And what I can say is that austerity politics, what we have had in the last 5 years, didn't solve the problem at all.
Right.
On the contrary, our debt has increased more.
Well, on that note,
what I want to focus
Tiziana,
now.
Well, Tiziana, on that note, that sad note, but we hope
Yes.
things can get better. But Tiziana, thank you very much indeed for joining us.